Hi everyone, and welcome back to my Disney mini album tutorial. Now in the previous videos we built the base and the inside elements, and today we are going to start decorating with our papers. Now I am using the Photoplay papers, but you can use any Disney themed papers or any themed papers if you don't want to create a Disney album but you want to follow along. I'm going to go through and give you measurements for the different pieces and then make some suggestions on the different elements and things that I will be adding in. Today what we're going to do is start decorating the cover, and then we'll see how long that takes, and then we may add some additional things, or it might just be the cover video. So stay tuned for the tutorial. For my album, I'm going to use a ribbon closure. So I have the same ribbon here as I used on my previous Disney album. I love this ribbon. So I've cut 2 pieces of it to 14 inches. And I'm going to be placing the first one on the front cover here in the center off of the right edge. And then the second one, I'm actually going to, oh, it's not going to be there. I'm going to be placing that on this spine here. So I'm just marking here where my center is. Now on my previous album, I put the paper on first and then I added my ribbon on the outside so you could see it. But on this album, I'm going to hide it behind the paper because I think I'm going to be placing a frame on the front of my album. Now I'm going to be using Fabric Fusion here for my ribbon. I normally use Fabri-Tac, but I ran out of Fabri-Tac. Actually, I had to throw my Fabri-Tac away because it was so old it would not come out of the bottle. And I purchased this instead because it was a small bottle and I wanted to see how this works, to see if it was similar to Fabric Fusion or not, or to see if it's similar to Fabri-Tac or not. And so far I think it seems to do a good job and I like it. So I'm going to continue using what I have, and then I'll decide next time if I'm going to use Fabri-Tac or if I'm going to continue to use this Fabric Fusion. So I've just taken my ribbon and put about 1 inch of the ribbon onto the end here. Now, sometimes what I've done in the past is I've actually added tape on top of this to make sure that I hold it in place, but I think it should be okay. Now I'm going to flip this over. Hopefully you'll still be able to see this okay when I do this. And then for this piece, if I can get my glue to come out, there it goes. I'm going to put my adhesive here on that spine, and then make sure that it is lined up with the ribbon that I just put on. Now, if this album wasn't so large, I would open this flat to do this, but it's so large it won't fit in the camera frame for sure, and it won't actually fit on the desk, I don't think, if I had it completely open. So I am going to let both of those dry, and I'm going to just set this off to the side and work on my pieces while I wait. So I've decided I'm going to mat my front and back covers. Actually, I'm gonna mat all of the cover pieces with black cardstock. So I have 2 pieces of black cardstock that measure 10 3/4 by 8 1/4. And I've decided to use this paper here for my front cover and my back cover and all of my spines. So since I'm using 12 by 12 papers, I'm only using the 2 sheets of this paper, and I can get the entire cover done with the paper. Now you can switch it up if you want to and put different designs, but I'm using this one, and I love this paper. I have to say it's shiny and it's a really nice weight. I'm very impressed by this paper. Now I've cut this piece to 10 1/2 by 8 inches. And I'm just going to mat this here. I know it's kind of hard to see because of my black mat, so maybe I'll take this. There, you can see it a little bit better. So I'm going to just adhere this paper right down to my black cardstock So I have that nice little uniform border around it. And then we're going to put this on the cover eventually, so it'll have that nice yellow border around that as well. So I've got 2 of these. So exact same thing. So 10 3/4 by 8 1/4 for the black cardstock, and then 10 1/2 by 8 inches for my paper. Now when I cut my paper, I cut all the way across at 8 inches, but I want to make sure that I keep these pieces because I'm actually going to be using those for my spines as well. And I typically, when I cut, I actually did this when I started, I cut this at 10 1/2 and 8. I didn't cut straight across the page because sometimes I might need this longer piece, and I wanted to make sure that I had enough, because if I hadn't done that and I'd cut through something and didn't have enough, I wouldn't be able to use that. So I'm just always careful about how I cut my papers. So I'm going to set those aside for now, and I'll show you the other pieces that I have. I've got my 2 spine pieces here. So this one is 1 3/4 by 8 1/4, which means this piece is 1 1/2 by 8 inches. And it's going to go in here. This is going to be for my left spine. This one is 1 1/4, or maybe it's 1 1/2. Yeah, this one's 1 1/2 by 8 1/4, and this one's 1 1/4 by 8 inches. And I'll place that here, and that's going to be for my right spine. Now for my top spine, I have a piece that measures 10 3/4 by 1 inch. And then I have this piece that measures 10 1/2 by 3/4. And it's going to go here, and then that will be the top spine. And then we've got the bottom spine, and it is tiny. It's 10 3/4 by 1/2 inch, which makes this piece 10 1/2 by 1/4 of an inch. So a very, very tiny little piece here, just a little sliver, but it is going to match all the rest of them. So I'm going to go ahead and add all of those papers onto my black cardstock, and then we'll come in and we'll start adding those pieces to the album. Okay, now that I have my pieces matted, I'm going to start with my one for my front cover, and I'm going to add it here. And I am actually going to put some Fabric Fusion on top of this and then use the rest of my tacky glue for the rest of it. Next, I have my largest spine piece. I know this is going to be challenging to see, but I'm going to be placing this piece here on this spine section. Now I'm going to actually sit this in my lap to do this, so I'm not going to do it on camera, but I'm going to adhere this down to my spine. And then at some point later, I'm probably going to insert an eyelet or one of the little hook things I have so that I can add a charm dangle on here, but I'm going to do that later. Now I do have my spine piece on. I hope you can see this. And this actually is the cut piece from here, so the pattern continues. So I'm going to line it up this direction so that pattern continues here. It's not a big deal, but I like to do that whenever I can. So I'm going to adhere this down to the back panel. Once my back cover is on, I'm going to take my next spine piece and apply it here to my right hand spine. And this piece is almost the exact same size as the spine. I didn't cut it any smaller because we still have that border on both sides of the yellow, so I wanted to make sure that it was larger, otherwise you'd have a lot of yellow showing here. So just be careful and make sure that it is lined up exactly in that spine area. Next, I'm going to be adding my top spine. So I'm going to take this and place this here in the center. And just like the one on the right, this spine is the exact same size because you have all this yellow here, you've got the doubled up layers here, and you've got all this. So I wanted to make sure that we have some other color here to contrast all of that yellow paper that you see on this side. Once that top spine is on, I'm going to flip over to the bottom and grab my bottom spine, and then it is going to go here. And again, it is just the same size, so you've got to be careful, make sure that you get it on there nice and straight. Next, I'm going to begin building up my cover. Now, my cover is going to have some dimension on it, so if you want to make it easier on yourself and you want to decorate the inside of this cover first, you can skip ahead to that video, but I'm going to add my cover first, and then I will be very careful when I decorate the inside cover. It's not going to have a ton of dimension, but it will have some, so it won't lay flat. So that's the only thing you want to be careful of. Now I have taken this image from my paper collection. It's 6x4, and I'm going to use this as the main focal point on the album, but I'm going to be making a shaker frame. And so I have this piece of MDF that I have laser cut. I will offer this available on my website, and I'll have different sizes. I'm gonna have a circle one too, I think, just so that you have different options if you wanted to try something different. I think a circle would be cute with this paper just because it has the circles on it. But I want to use this full image here, so I'm going with this size. Now this card is 6x4, so this cutout here is just a little bit smaller. It's going to be 1/8 of an inch smaller on all 4 sides, and then the frame is actually 1/2 inch. So I have designed this to fit on this card here. And what I'm going to do is put my shaker elements inside and then place a piece of acetate here on the front. Now, if you don't want to purchase the MDF frame, but you want to make a shaker, you can cut 3 layers of chipboard into a frame and you can layer this up, or you could use foam tape if you prefer to use foam tape. I personally don't like foam tape because I have so much chipboard laying around that I just use it up, but the pieces tend to have sticky on the sides, so then the shaker elements tend to stick to it. At least that's been my experience, so I don't prefer using that. And I have so much MDF that I'm just going to use my MDF. That way it'll give me that 1/8 of an inch in there to add my different shaker elements. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually center this exactly centered onto my cover, and then we'll get started on creating the shaker. Once I have my piece on, I'm going to take my frame and I am going to then place this here on the center as well. Now, I'm going to be completely covering my frame with paper, but if I wasn't, a lot of times what I do is I use markers, either alcohol markers or Sharpie markers, to color the edges here. That way I would have a small border and my pieces would have that small border around them, but I'm going to completely cover it, so it's not going to matter. You can also use paint to paint your MDF if you prefer as well. Now, if you're using chipboard, you either want to paint it, color it, or completely cover it like I'm going to do. So the next step is to place your frame onto your cover. Next, it's time to add shaker elements inside. So I have here some little red sequins that I'm going to add in first. And I like to have some flatter dimension in here, or some flatter elements, but I do have some room, so it is okay to add a little bit of bulkier things. Now here I have some gold sequins, and I'm going to be taking these off of a strand. These were just, I think they were purchased years ago, maybe at like Joann's. So I'm going to take some of these off of here next. In this little jar, I have, I don't know if you can see it. If I dump it out maybe on my hand, it's kind of hard to see, but they're little iridescent white pieces and then some gold stars. It's kind of like a confetti in a way, but it's got those little gold stars. I really like those. And I think I've got this here that's got a lot of different ones in it. I think this is the same with the different stars. This is just regular confetti. These, I've got more stars. These ones are silver, but I'm gonna add some silver stars in there. And then here I've got these little seed beads. These are from Renee Bouquets, and they're gold as well. So I'm going to add some of those because they're fun. And you can add whatever elements that you want into yours. And now I'm just going to smooth them out a little bit so that they are laying flat, because they were all kind of clumped up in the center. What I'm going to do next, I'm going to take my 1/8 inch double-sided tape, and I'm going to be applying this right here on the edge, around the inside edge of my frame on all 4 sides. And this is what's going to hold down my acetate. I like to use double-sided tape for acetate. I don't feel like the glue holds it, so I prefer to use my double-sided tape. Next, I have my piece of acetate, and it is cut to 6 inches by 4 inches. Remember, my opening is, oh, it's gonna cling easy, so I'm going to just leave this up here. My opening is 1/8 of an inch smaller on all 4 sides, so it's going to fit on that adhesive. Now I'm going to remove part of my adhesive on each of the strips. Now this is how I like to place my acetate so that it sits correctly. I'm going to take one corner on all 4 strips, and I'm going to bend it to the side and leave the rest covered so that it's not all sticky. Now, once I stick this on here, this stuff is going to cling to it, so I'm going to do this and I'm not going to move it. But I'm going to set it on the areas where there is no sticky first. That way I can move this around and get it in position. Now, once it's in position, I'm going to just stick it down to all 4 of those parts that are open. And then I'm going to bring my bone folder in here. I'm going to smooth it down on each of these just to get it to adhere and tack really well. And then I'm going to just one at a time peel my tape away and then smooth it down. And now we have our shaker with our little acetate window on it. Next, we're going to make our frame pieces. So my frame is 1/2 of an inch wide. So I have my pieces cut to 1/2 of an inch wide. My first 2 strips I cut to 6 3/4 of an inch. And then I have cut these sides at 45-degree angles, and I'm going to show you how. So the first 2 are going to be on the top and the bottom. I'll move this back into frame in just a minute when we're done cutting the other pieces. These 2 pieces are 4 3/4 by 1/2 an inch. Now what I'm going to do, I know it's a little hard to see this piece, but I'm going to be making the side piece here. So on the inside or the top edge, I'm going to measure over from the right side 1/2 an inch. So I'll measure over at 1/2 an inch and place a mark. Then I'm going to go from that mark to that bottom right corner. Just like that. Hopefully you can see that mark. I know it's hard on black paper. Then I'm going to come in here with my scissors and cut that part there. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side, measuring over 1/2 an inch from that top left, and then drawing my line from that mark down to that bottom left corner. Then I'm going to cut this one, and I'm left with this piece here. Now let me bring this back in. When this piece is down here, this piece here should meet right in that center and have that nice mitered corner look, and it'll meet at the center up here as well. Once I have my first piece cut, I'm just going to take this and use it as a template for cutting my second piece. So now I have my pieces, and then I will use this. You could also use this as a template for your longer pieces as well, since they're both cut at a 1/2 inch in, they're going to be the same. So I've got my 4 pieces here, and what I'm going to do to cover this, first I'm going to take my double-sided tape again, and I'm going to place it right on top of my acetate here, making sure that it's still on the frame. I don't want to go too far into that shaker, so be careful where you're placing this. And then for the rest of it, I'm actually just going to be using my tacky glue to adhere that paper down to the MDF frame to cover it. And then I'm going to take one of my long strips line up that edge at the top and then press this down. Now this paper is shiny, so I've been trying to be really careful and not use my bone folder on it because I don't want to scratch it. But I need to make sure that this is adhered down. Once that first piece is on, I'm going to take my next piece here. That's my smaller, shorter end. I'm going to apply my adhesive to my frame. And then carefully lining up that mitered edge and then setting this piece down here and pressing it down. Then I'm going to repeat that with this one, and I have to be careful here because this actual tape is under my piece just a little bit. There we go. And then I'm going to apply my adhesive down here on the bottom. Then I'll take my second long piece, and I'm starting with this mitered corner here and setting my piece right down on top of that frame and then smoothing it down. And then I'll take my 4th piece off, or take the backing off of my 4th piece of tape, and then apply that adhesive, and we're going to put that 4th and final piece down. Now that I have my frame covered, I'm going to let all those pieces dry just because my paper is a little shiny. It's taking a little bit longer to dry and I don't want this to move. Then I'm going to come back and start adding some more decorative elements to the sides of my frame. Now I've taken a bunch of my stickers, I've backed them just onto black cardstock and fussy cut around them, and I'm going to start layering these pieces up onto my frame. So this is the piece that I wanted to use as like my main image. I just really like this. I thought it was cute. I added one of the mini bows on top of the bow that was on here just because I thought that was cute too. And I have the Mickey pants and then these 2 tickets. So because there are words here, I want to make sure that I don't have this covering anything up. So it's going to be down here where this piece is going to be here. And I'm going to be tucking the Mickey pants just under here like this. And I'll take this and I'm going to have it, I think, at an angle. I don't think I'm going to have it straight. I think I'm going to angle this down like that. And then this ticket piece, I'm going to tuck back here behind this stuff too. So I'm just going to layer it until I like the look of it. And now because this is hanging over the edge, I've got a couple of pieces of my chipboard. I actually have 3 layers of it that I'm going to be sticking here. And I'll put some under here too. That way this doesn't get bent down. So for now, my goal is just to tentatively lay it on here to see how I like the look of it. And I think I am gonna leave that ticket straight instead of making it at an angle. I like the look of that better. And then for the opposite corner, I have my red star and my gold star. And then the hooray piece. And then I've taken one of the little tiny yellow hearts. And I think I'm going to put that here too. So I'm going to layer all of these pieces up like this. That way I have just some in the opposite corner. Now you can layer yours obviously however you choose, and you can pick whichever pieces from your paper collection you like. You don't have to add anything here if you don't want to. It's really up to you, but I like to have things in opposite corners. That way it just kind of gives it more across the cover, or one cluster of things, and I would leave the rest blank. But I really like the look of the 2 clusters. So I'm just going to take my time and I'm going to adhere my pieces down to my frame. I am going to add a piece of my double-sided tape underneath of any piece that is touching my frame. That way it will stick to that as well. This one I won't because there's so little of it, but this one I will, and then the star I will, so that it will be stuck down to that acetate. Now the last thing that I'm going to do to my cover for now is I'm going to add some of these little enamel dots. I think I'm going to use some of the yellow ones, and I am going to just add a couple of them onto my frame here. You can add pearls or gems if you don't have the enamel dots, or you don't have to add anything like this if you don't like it either. So it's really up to you, however you want to embellish your album. So these are the only ones I'm going to be putting on for now. And what I'm actually going to do is, I don't think that these stick long term, so I'm going to go back, I'm going to pull these off, and I'm going to add some glossy accents to the back so that they are stuck down permanently. And then this is all I'm going to be adding to my cover at the moment. Once the entire album is done, I think I mentioned this in another video, I am going to make a spine dangle with charms, but I'm going to wait until it's completely decorated because I'll need to punch the hole, and I want the spine to be decorated on the inside, and then I don't have to keep moving it out of the way whenever I'm decorating. So that will be the last thing that I add on to my album. That is the end of this part of the tutorial, and I hope you have found it helpful to start adding some embellishments and decorating your album. In the next video, we're going to start going on the inside of the album, and it will probably be broken down into 4 parts, so 1 for each page, depending on how long it takes me for how long to decorate all the pages. I might combine some of them, or I might have 4 separate videos. I hope you will stay tuned, and I will see you in the next tutorial.